Okay, got my usual palette of colors here, using Liquid Original as my medium, and I'm painting on a 16 by 20 inch panel. All right, so here is the scene I'm looking at. Kind of a challenge, not a lot of shadows to work with today. Just gonna use the abstract shapes to try to create an interesting painting. All right, I decided to tone in burnt sienna, so I just thin the burnt sienna with some odorless mineral spirits, scrub it on with a natural bristle brush, and then wipe it down with a paper towel. That'll give me a sort of nice warm undertone to the painting. There we go. Sketching in burnt sienna as well, just thinning with odorless mineral spirits. I'm gonna try to get some like sort of gestural strokes here first. I'm just looking for big shapes to start with. Got the road right here. Kind of goes off this way. There's going to be a car right here, and it's basically just a dark shape. It's going to have some highlights on it. But for now, just a rectangle as a placeholder. And once I get these general shapes in place, then I can become more specific. Okay, and then in the distance, there's Mount Diablo. All right, so defining the shape of the car. You know, first looking for the outline, basically. Then usually I'll kind of indicate the windshield. And then like the roof goes like that. This line goes more straight down. Also paying attention to the angle of, you know, the bottom of the car, which seems to slope off a little bit. There's a lot of information here, so this is really gonna challenge me to, you know, simplify. So I'm gonna be doing a lot of squinting and looking at big shapes. In the background here, there are a lot of houses, but I'm just gonna leave that area blank for now. I'd actually like to see a bit of the bay in the distance. All right, so I've kind of focused in this area just to get some definition in here. The buildings that are in the distance can be pretty abstract. That's not a problem. Trees over to the side here, very abstract as well. As long as there's just a little bit of detail in here, I think I'm gonna be okay. I could use some of the lighter buildings in the distance to kind of draw the eye out, but I won't know for sure until I've blocked it in. All right, starting with a dark mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and I've got a little bit of liquid in here as well. And this car is definitely the darkest shape. This is actually the darkest value in the painting, so I'm gonna establish this first, keeping it sort of, you know, transparent. And I'll come on top of this with more specific colors, but for now, I just want to establish this shape. There's a bit of the curb right here. And I talk about, you know, squinting at the scene. And the reason for that is just to simplify things into shapes. So I'm not looking at things. If I start looking at things, I'm going to get discouraged, confused. This whole area here, I'm just going to simplify with a kind of gray mixture. This is all like houses and trees. But I'm treating it as one big shape for now. And then I'll break that up with delicate shifts in value and temperature. When I started painting, I would have tried to draw all of the houses in here, paint all of the separate houses. And that's just, first of all, it's no fun. And second of all, it just doesn't make for a very good painting either. Okay. All right, for the sky, I'm using titanium white and ultramarine blue. A lot of times I'll, you know, put in the sky just because determining the color is pretty easy. And then I work from there. You know, I know that this mountain is going to be slightly darker. Actually, for now, though, I'm going to keep it sort of in the same range, actually. I'll leave an area for the water out here, which will be like kind of a darker teal or aqua color. And until I get the whole panel covered, I don't really know what I'm dealing with, you know? It's hard to judge the other colors and values, and just to see if the painting overall has a nice feel to it. All right, it's got titanium white here with phthalo blue. I'm gonna have to tone down the saturation, but I'm just going to start with that. There we go. All right, so for the dark portion of the road, I'm using ultramarine blue, titanium white, burnt sienna, and a touch of alizarin crimson. And again, squinting at the scene, just looking at shapes. I chose a 16 by 20 inch panel too, so that I would have some room to swing the brush, and also, you know, so that these shapes weren't too small. I find that if the shapes are too small, it actually takes me longer to do the painting. All right, so for the road in the foreground, I'm adding a little titanium white to the mix and also a touch of yellow ochre. All right, this might be too warm, but that's all right. It's just a starting point. I've mentioned this before, but lately I've been approaching every painting as if it's sort of an experiment. You know, no expectations, and just to see if the idea will work. And what I've found is that most of the time, you know, when I approach it in an experimental way, it does tend to work out, or they work out better than when I'm, you know, kind of careful about what I'm doing, or if I have too many expectations. You know, I try not to have expectations and just explore and see what happens. All right, so I used some dioxazine purple and mixed it into this sort of blue mixture I had here. All right, so indicating some of these roofs here, and not so concerned with the color, more just with the value and the shapes. Just want to establish the shapes early on. This roof here is a little lighter, adding a touch of burnt sienna and titanium white. Okay. And then this roof here has more purple in it, actually. All right, adding a bit of dioxazine purple. Sometimes making fast decisions, you know, about your color mixing is more accurate than if you sit there and stare at it, at least for me. Okay, there we go. Okay, titanium white and ultramarine blue. There's a section of road here that's kind of lighter and bluer, and then it carries on up in this direction too. Kind of like that. Alright, mixing up a dark green here using ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and cad yellow medium. There's like a tree right here. There are some other trees out in this area. I'm going to wait on including those though. I think I want to keep this value about where it is. And I may have some light out on the horizon here, like there's buildings across the bay. Maybe that'll draw the eye out in that direction. All right, so we've got ultramarine blue here, cadmium yellow medium, indicating some of these lawn shapes here. And this tree right here is kind of a light blue-green, titanium white, phthalo blue, and yellow ochre. All right, that color's a little too cool, but I'll be warming that up. Titanium white, phthalo blue, and a touch of cadmium yellow medium. And there's like this aqua sort of colored house out here. Like that. Okay, and this fence actually is darker here. All right, so a mixture of ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow medium, and burnt sienna. Kind of like that. All right, titanium white here with some transparent yellow oxide. Use this as my starting color for the sidewalks. Starting to build up some of the detail in the car here. Most of what I'm gonna do here is just define the car with some highlights. Okay, and there's a bit of light coming through the rear windows there. And then on the front of the car, there's like a grille. And then obviously the headlights right there too. Some titanium white here. The brightest spot on the car is, you know, right along in here, squinting, of course. There's little highlights in the headlights as well. And then there's some reflected sky right along in here. That value might be a little too bright. And I'm going to extend the bottom down a little bit. And then there's also a bit of a cast shadow right here too. Sort of like that. Alright, so for the car I'm using a number 4 synthetic flat. And this will allow me to get a little more detail. It's still kind of a large brush for this particular, you know, size shape. But that's exactly what I want, because I do want this just to be suggested. I don't want it to be, you know, overly tight or careful, because then it will not blend in with the rest of the painting. So I'm not going to do much more than that. Maybe just kind of straighten up, you know, some of these shapes here, like the grill. All right, so I'm going to darken the sky reflection along here. Kind of like that. All right, so here's what I finished up with. I did make a few compositional changes. Number one, I moved this corner here into the picture. It was actually further over to the right. You know, I moved it in here to create a little more definition in the road shape. One of the things I liked about the shape of the road was how it led the eye into the painting. With this corner over to the right, this bottom was just sort of a big rectangle shape. So yeah, move that into the painting. Also, I raised the distant shoreline here so that I could include more of the bay. Punched up the saturation too a little bit so that it was more visible. Being that there's just a little sliver of the bay visible, I wanted to make sure it was noticed. One of the big challenges was trying to figure out what to do with this jumble of houses behind this row of houses here. And I decided just to keep the value range sort of narrow, and build it up with just patches of color, not a lot of definition, and then maybe have a little more definition on these houses here. And I used a number 4 synthetic flat to build up a little more definition in here, and then also in the car. I liked the value of the car as well. It was pretty dark, and I felt like it was kind of heavy and drawing too much attention, so I liked the value. Also, initially, the road here was kind of a light, warm color, and I felt that that also broke up the continuity of the road, so I used the color of this passing road here and just carried that forward into the foreground. And tried to keep some transparency in that color to keep it, to create a sense of light. So even though it's a cool color, it's a blue, I still feel like there's a feeling of light on the road, even though, like I said, even though it's a cool color. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. Got a bunch of extra videos on there and a materials list, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.